for
Pardon me?
our basic institution, the church?
I see that as a part. The church is a cult misoriented. I see that as a part of the problem
Sure.
and perpetuating the
Absolutely.
problem. So I don't see, from my studying of the condition of our people,
But
I
that's
think
where
that
you
we're in.
find, you will find more of our people in a church building than you will in a university.
More women, not necessarily men.
Well,
the
you may have
men
to
aren't
target it.
anywhere. They're not in
Yeah.
the university and they're not in the church either.
Well, you may have to target it, but I'm saying the answer is
Okay.
not going to come through that institution. That's an institution that was really generated by cultural oppression. I mean, we adopted the religious systems that we operate under now on the plantation en masse. I mean, that's so, and I contend that African people just sit back quietly and think, as some other guests were talking about meditation, think quietly, we'll see that there's nothing that Caucasian cultural reality has given to black people has been beneficial to black people. They gave it to us, they gave it to us freely, then it wasn't beneficial. There was no intent to be beneficial. And so it participates in our oppression. So I think that the whole idea of this idea of what I call a interface, interacting creator, intervening creator. That means we sit back and wait, and some other force, some spiritual force is going to come and save us, or whatever. So we don't use this frontal lobe gift that the creative force gave us to transform our world and to create the world that we want. And so, so I'm saying those things they immobilize us. Those systems, those religious systems, they seem to have so far, and so. I don't see that as the answer.
I didn't see it as an answer.
I mean, the
but I just thought
HBCUs are
maybe,
there. You know, I mean, they're there too. If you talk about existing institutions, they're there too.
Okay.
But they're trying to duplicate whatever they imagine Harvard is doing and Stanford is doing. They're not trying to create new ideas and create new ideas about what education means and should mean for African people. So I think that existing institutions are obviously a part of the process of cultural misorientation.
Okay.
Because they wouldn't, the white supremacist system wouldn't allow them to exist if they were not
They
contributing
maintain
to
the status
quo. Absolutely.
Right.
You know.
What he just said was what your buddy always says. Jesse always says, nobody's going to save us but us.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think we have to realize that.
Bobby said it before Jesse said it.
Exactly, exactly. And we have to start with our children. Our children are being bombarded with technological garbage, the television, the games, the video games, the whole bit, which again is designed to keep us in a certain mode as opposed to allowing us to burst out of that mode. Many of our children watch television 8-10 hours a day, and that's insane because there's nothing on the television that reinforces the African centeredness that we're talking about.
Yeah.
In the interview, African Consciousness, True or False, on the H3O Art of Life show, Dr. Kobi Kambon began by addressing a question about the black church and its role as a foundational institution in the black community. He explained that, according to his research, the black church as it exists today is culturally misoriented. While it has historically offered community structure and hope, Dr. Kambon argued that this was ultimately an institution given to African people by their oppressors, not one created from their own cultural framework. As a result, it often reinforces dependency on external forces rather than empowering African people to solve their own problems. He emphasized that liberation cannot come from waiting on a deity introduced through colonialism and slavery, but from reclaiming the divine power and intelligence already within us. Dr. Kambon reminded viewers that African people were created with all the gifts, creativity, and knowledge needed to heal themselves and their communities. The problem, he said, is not a lack of ability, but a lack of self-definition. When we depend on a God, system, or institution designed by our oppressors, we subconsciously surrender our power. According to Kambon, most black institutions today, whether schools, churches, or community organizations, do not produce independent thinkers or problem solvers. Instead, they produce individuals who unknowingly uphold the very systems that keep them oppressed. This dynamic, he warned, and ensures that each generation of black people continues to exhibit behaviors that sustain white supremacy rather than dismantle it.
And again, the cultural misorientation construct is raised the issue of who defines black reality. Do black people define it in their own interests, in their own image and interests, or toward their own affirmation, or is it defined by this external anti-black energy, anti-African force called racial cultural oppression? And so it raised the issue that we have to control, we have to define our own reality, we have to control our own reality. And so it charges us to, if we're going to have an institution in our community, then it must become under the control of what Bobby called the black social theory and what I call African cultural reality. It must come under that control. Otherwise, it is not an African-centered institution. It will not lead to the affirmation and empowerment of our people. So it's a battle. It's a war. It's a, Baba Jake used to call it the Civil War. He said, first of all, we got to have a civil war before we can have the war. You know, so we have to root out, you know, the Eurocentrism, or I call it Caucasianism, inside of us, so that we can begin to assert what is naturally in us, what is it's suppressing, you know, and so we need African-centered information to begin to call forth that. Absolutely, to call forth that which is natural to us. And
you can't go into battle without arms.
That's right. So we gotta control institutions. There's no way around it.
There's no way around it.
You know, but we may have to do it incrementally, begin it, but certainly we must do it. And we need these psychologists on board. Now we're still, we're still waging war inside. We got the Civil War going on inside. Bobby was leading it when he was alive inside the ABPSI, or the Association of Black Psychologists. And so that war is still continuing. We're fighting for the mind of the psychologists so they can then go out and lead this psychological liberation movement.
Lord have mercy.
Well, that's a reality in every profession. Amongst the political scientists, we have this distorted notion of reality.
I know it. Educators,
sociologists, education.
Educators are supremely guilty of this.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
And they are well-intentioned, and that's the saddest part. Is
they are
They
well-intentioned,
really think that they're
misguided.
Doing good. They're missionaries. You know, they've been sent out into the colonies to civilize savages.
Another critical issue that the construct of cultural misorientation raises is the fact that it challenges us to recognize and distinguish between the European cultural reality and the African cultural reality, so that we can differentiate what we have become from what we ought to be. And so if we don't have what I call the worldview's paradigm, a paradigm that highlights this distinction, then we will continue to operate within the framework of the European worldview without knowing it. And so we won't make any attempt to alter that orientation in our people. And so I think that again, this construct is broadly applicable, as you can see, because it raised the issue that if we're internalizing the wrong cultural reality, then it implies, by implication, there is a right or correct cultural reality out there, and we have to discover it. And, you know, and
so the assumption has to be there.
Yes,
the assumption, and the hardest part for us is the assumption. First of all, you got to assume that there's something amiss. Something is not right about
Well, we got to explain this hypertension and these migraine headaches and all these things that you know that the European worldview tries to explain to us and give them acceptability. But we have to see that everybody else don't suffer those things. Other people, non-blacks, don't suffer those things. So it's obviously something about the reality that we are operating in that is not affirming, you know, and it's changing our own biochemistry, you know, and killing our people. And
now, you know, that's just, you need to say that twice, you know, because unless people can be persuaded that this is harmful, because you will hear people say things like, what difference does it make? It's on my head. What difference does it make? So, you know, it's not going to make a great deal of difference, and they don't see things in increments. They don't see how you keep piling this on. You first you do this little thing, then you do this next little thing, and then you keep on until you have done so much. You have submerged what was there in the first place, so that it can't even be identified. You can't even find a you that you started with when you keep adding all these things. I don't want to leave this, but I do have to a minute, because I have to let you talk about the most critical experience in African diaspora and history, which you, of course, are talking about what people call, quote, quote, the slave trade.
Enslavement. The
enslavement.
System, yes, experience.
Yeah.
I think that's
the most critical.
Well, I think it's the most critical because that's where we experienced the cultural disruption. It altered our memory of who we are, who we were, who we're supposed to be, and it also altered our cultural cues, our cultural signals, the cultural that we use to maintain our proper orientation, our correct orientation, our affirmative orientation. So I think that's where it was severed protractedly during the enslavement era. We were force-fed through violence and brutality, the European worldview. I mean, we didn't adopt it and embrace it.
To be uprooted.
Absolutely.
You know, and I mean, the disorientation.
Absolutely.
Where is this?
Yeah,
You're
right.
out on a sea. Not that we had not been on the sea before, because I understand that we frequently came here and traded and spent time among the people who were the indigenous people who were here already. Sometimes we remained and married. Most times we went home because we liked our home. So we weren't baffled by the ocean. But why are we on this ocean, and where is this ship taking us?
Well, it was the trauma of the kidnapping.
Absolutely.
You see, it was the kidnapping. I mean, the forced displacement, the forced separation. I think, and I don't think we in psychology even have paradigms to relate to the level of trauma that our people actually underwent, you know, through that experience. And so I think that we're still trying to develop the kind of constructs that we need to capture the psychological dilemma that our people experience in this traumatizing zone called the Ma'afa, or the enslavement experience. So I think we're still studying it. Just think about the fact that at the so-called emancipation, you know, when you have wars and catastrophes, they call them triage. You know, they bring the medical, the aid out to the people. They rush it out there and set up some emergency things.
Look at your vital signs.
Yeah, so we can, you know, we can check these people out and bring them.
Begin a plan of treatment.
That was not done for our people. I mean, here we come. Not that they were capable of doing so, but it never happened. And these people coming out of this traumatizing experience, unparalleled in human history, and they're just told to go on and get on with your life as best you can.
Act like they never laid a glove on
you.
you.
All of the trauma that we brought with, and I think that comes out in the post-traumatic slave disorders paradigm and the post-traumatic slave syndromes.
I want you to talk about that, because most people deny that there is a post-traumatic syndrome, but it's real.
Well, I think it's just like cultural misorientation. You see, it's reinforced by the institutions of society, and that's how you overlook it. The institutions say it's okay. They'll say you're okay.
Get over it.
They say you're okay. You're okay.
Get over it.
Black people are supposed to struggle. They're supposed to have problems. So they've given us an explanation for the turmoil that we continue to experience. And as long as we're getting consistent messages that this is normal, you people just gotta zip it up or tub it up or so on and so forth.
Quit whining.
Then what do we do? What are we gonna do? You know, and then religion give us, say you can go pie in the sky or you know, or pray over it and that kind of thing and whatever. So nobody answers. Nobody looks at systematically addressing the issue of.
I just want to take issue with one part of that, because I do it all the time. I do it with Patricia Newton, do it with Hunter. There's nothing post about this slavery. So-called slavery. You cannot act as though this trauma has ended. You know, this whole idea of the emancipation and now you're free and what are you complaining about? You know, there's nothing. Stop calling it post. Call it traumatic disorder and associated with whatever you want to call it, enslavement, slavery.
You can call it post-plantation.
But don't let it, well, okay, you can call it post-plantation or post. I don't like post because it it severs it from the current
it suggests
experience.
That I agree.
And it suggests that it ended. We must
really,
not suggest.
And it really explains the current experience.
Right.
Right. There's no discontinuity.
So
there.
let's don't do post. That's all I care about is that we do recognize. And when you think about, the first time I went to Senegal, and we went to Gorée Island, and we stood there, and we listened to the lecture, and we looked out the door of no return. And they talked about how the women, as you pointed out, were brutally, sexually brutalized by the captors, and how they separated the children from the mothers, from the men, and the men could hear the women and children being sexually brutalized, and they could not do anything about it. And you could almost hear the screams. You could feel, you felt in that environment, you felt it. You felt like you were there. You felt, you saw in your mind's eye, you saw the helplessness of our people who were pinned into those dark, concrete rooms, separated from each other. What must that have done to every single one of them, particularly the children, so that when there's no description for that. You absolutely, they tried, I know that, we got Ma'afa, we got, but you can't sum that up.
Well, it's so unprecedented. We don't have a vocabulary for it yet.
No, it's beyond, it's inexpressible.
Yeah.
That experience is inexpressible, and which is why I understand why you say it's the critical experience, because it is so far beyond anything that human beings have ever had to endure. And then to be dismissed as though, okay, that happened, and as Bob is saying, get over it, get on, have closure, and get on with your life.
At the heart of this ongoing cycle is what Dr. Kambon called cultural misorientation, the process through which African people's worldview and value systems are defined by their oppressors. Cultural misorientation distorts the natural African consciousness, replacing it with beliefs, customs, and goals aligned with white supremacy. It defines what is considered normal, moral, and successful, even when those definitions work against African survival and advancement. Dr. Kambon stressed that this psychological conditioning allows white supremacy to reproduce itself across generations without the need for direct control. The purpose of cultural misorientation, he said, is to define the reality of the oppressed, to make African people see themselves through the eyes of their enemies. To counter this, Dr. Kambon called on African people to redefine themselves for themselves. He urged the rebuilding of all major institutions, from churches and schools to mental health centers, banks, and families, under an African-centered framework. Only then can Black people begin to reclaim control over their collective destiny. He insisted that redefining reality must start with the way that African people think, learn, and heal. The mental revolution precedes any social or economic revolution. Without African-centered thought, even our best efforts risk being filtered through Western standards and continuing the same cycle of dependency and disorientation. Dr. Kambon concluded by reflecting on the consequences of allowing others to define our identity and interpret our behavior. For more than a century, white supremacists, psychologists, educators, and institutions have diagnosed and labeled Black people through a Eurocentric lens, one that saw pathology where there was resilience and inferiority where there was difference. Now, he said, it's the time for African people to study, interpret, and heal themselves through an African-centered psychological framework. This requires a massive paradigm shift, a transformation of the mind. Without it, he warned, cultural confusion and self-destruction will remain normalized. But with it, African people can restore their collective consciousness, rebuild their world, and ensure their survival as a proud, self-defining people.